Thank you very much for inviting me to your conclave. And what a brilliant topic. I would argue at this particular juncture, there's nothing more important than how we get research evidence around public health and nutrition into policy. And I'd like to thank Drs. Deepak Saxena and Dr. Komal Shah for inviting me to present to you today. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the Action Against Stunting Hub and then about some of the challenges we face in terms of getting hub research into policy. And I'm going to talk about universal challenges. These are not particular to the hub, and I'm sure you will cover them in much greater depth over the next 2 days. So who are we? We are a collection of 18 different institutions working across 3 continents, dedicated to looking at how we can solve the global problem of child stunting. We are a deeply interdisciplinary team. We cross 17 disciplines, and I don't necessarily think that does justice to the expertise of our collaborators on the hub. But the question remains, how are we going to do this? How do you combine 18 institutions and 17 disciplines into the solution for one problem? And we're doing that via the whole child approach. So we're starting from the deep biology of the child and cascading out. So we're looking at epigenetics and the microbiome and nutrition, looking into the home environment, from diets to pathogens to behaviors, looking at the educational environment, from caregiving behavior and early child development, all the way to the food system, from value chains to are households able to get adequate, good, healthy diets, affordable diets? And wrapping this whole package together is at the community level, we're exploring shared values. So what are our aims? We've got 2 broad aims of the hub. First, we want to identify the constellation of features and factors where stunting can be ameliorated or potentially reversed. And secondly, we want to understand the best time to intervene. But the question remains, how do we move all of this evidence into policy? And I think there are really 3 criteria. The first is the aims and objectives of the research needs to be policy relevant. And the second is, okay, if it's policy relevant, it still needs to be appropriately translated. And the final criteria, I would argue, relates to timing. The right evidence needs to be presented at the right time. So what do we mean by policy relevant research? So this is from a paper written for the New Zealand government way back in 2004, and I would encourage all of you to find it because it's very interesting. So the authors note that policy relevant research presents what has been, what is, and what is likely to be in a specific social context in order to inform policy decisions. And I would argue that it's in order to inform specific policy decisions. So the authors go on to say that policy relevant research is an effective blending of researcher awareness of policy decisions, and they combine this awareness, researcher awareness, with really decision maker awareness of the knowledge base that's out there. So how do we do this? Well, what is, it boils down to translation. So I would argue that we've got plenty of evidence, we've got plenty of information, but this evidence often isn't framed to match specific policy needs or decisions. And there's a big skills gap. And this is where conclaves, such as the one that IIPhD has organized over the next 2 days, is so vitally important. Because researchers need to know better how to communicate with policymakers, and policymakers need to know our knowledge base. And I guess the final real conundrum of moving evidence into policy relates to timing. We can talk about timing, But how do we know the best time to present our research results? And I think, it's a very difficult thing to detail. We have to know the policy environment that policymakers are working in, and we also need to know the demands on policymakers. There's absolutely no point presenting a piece of evidence that the people aren't ready to digest. They can't use it. They've got other pressures on them coming from other places. And I think that we need to be aware of that. So I guess I just wanted to talk about these 3 things. These are elements that the Hub is definitely grappling with. I really look forward to learning the outcome of your conclave, and I hope that I can be with you next year. Thank you so much.